And it is the Saturday Coffee Klatch with Heather Lofthouse and yours truly, Robert Reich. And Heather, I've got to ask you, week number 8. I mean, it's like being on a marathon that never ends and is also disgusting. I mean, are you okay? I want to just check
I'm
in.
okay. You're so kind. I'm okay. I mean, I think we need a scale here. Out of 1 to 10, I'm probably a 7.8, which is not bad
Oh, that's
considering all that's happening.
7.8.
C
Holy cow.
plus. Yeah.
That's I haven't reached 5 since, January
Oh,
20th, but that's
I hate to hear
a
that.
lot of people keep coming up to me and they say, "Can he do this? Can he do this?" And what I keep on responding is, "Well, he can't. It's illegal, but he is."
I
I mean,
know.
if we don't
Can we
have,
talk about that?
well, we'll talk about that. Tell me
Yeah,
what
we'll
we're going
talk
to
about
talk about today.
Let's talk about Elon and China, right? Let's talk about Trump and education, Doge and the economy, and then we have a special guest, FTC Commissioner Rebecca Slaughter.
Oh, I can't wait to talk to Rebecca Slaughter, Commissioner Rebecca Slaughter. But on your first point, Heather, the China and Musk, a fascinating, important issue. Because he was supposed to meet, in fact, he did meet with the Secretary of Defense, that is Musk and Hegseth, yesterday. But the New York Times reported on Thursday that the meeting was going to be a high level, one of the most sensitive, classified information briefings you can have about the Pentagon's preparations for war with China, if we ever did go to war with China. And this is, I mean, you can't get more secretive, you can't get more sensitive than this. And Musk was going to, even though Musk has, I mean, he's not even part of the government, and he has all kinds of conflicts of interest. People were very worried about it. And then apparently, because this story appeared both in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, Trump got a little bit nervous about it and called it off. I mean, or he said, go ahead with the meeting, but don't talk about China.
But
That's,
why is that? He doesn't get nervous over anything. What's his reasoning?
I think, and we'll come back to this. This is a point that's actually interesting to me. He gets nervous not so much about the New York Times, but about the Wall Street Journal. And it may have to do with Rupert Murdoch. Because Murdoch obviously sits there behind the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, and Fox News. So Trump is a little bit nervous about Murdoch's response and
Right.
reactions. And
So
I
this was
think,
I was going to say it's a win for the press, and also there was an anonymous tip. I feel like anonymous tips are going to be helpful in the next 4 years.
well, that's all we can hope for is anonymous tips. And this came from the inside. This is very deep in the Pentagon and very high up in the Pentagon. You can imagine if there was going to be this meeting. A lot of people in the Pentagon obviously are very concerned, and the CIA about this because Musk. Remember, it's not clear who Musk works for. Musk has his largest Tesla factory in the world in Shanghai, in China. He got special permission to build it. The Chinese put $2.8 billion into this factory, and Musk has been. It's also that's where his market now is. He's not selling a lot of Teslas in the United States. The only place he's selling electronic vehicles, his Teslas, is in China. That's the only place they're increasing in sales. So he needs China. And he'd been, last year, do you remember he said that Taiwan really ought to be part of China?
Yep.
Hello?
Hello.
I mean, he's somehow managing this divide, and it's not clear, frankly, who he works for. And so somebody in the Pentagon, very high up, leaked this to the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal because they were so gravely concerned. The Washington Post, no, sorry, the New York Times and the Wall Street
No.
Journal did respond to this leak by putting it on the front page, and it had the desired effect, apparently. We don't
And
know.
any time, I know exactly, we don't know, but any time that we have an example of Trump not actually Musk, I keep confusing the two. Musk not having carte blanche access to everything. I feel like it's a win. I get so excited when I see the meeting wasn't happening.
It's interesting.
That's why I'm a 7.8.
How far we've fallen in terms of, I mean, even national security. I was never a hawk on national security, Heather. I don't think you were, but compared to what is happening right now, and compared to the Republicans in Congress who seem to be willing to do absolutely anything. I mean, there are a couple of exceptions, but these Republicans don't care. They seem not to care about national security, about China, about Xi Jinping, and also Vladimir Putin, and Musk has very close ties with both.
And who is Musk? He doesn't even have a security clearance. I mean,
he doesn't have any clearance.
Weren't you number 12? I can't remember what number you were in terms of, if the president died and the VP died and everyone, you were number 12. I mean, Musk isn't even on the list.
I'm not allowed to tell you.
I think I read that on Wikipedia.
Well, okay, I'm not tell them. But you're right. Musk doesn't have security. I mean, he has some sort of clearance, but it's not clear how he got it. Congress has never, looked over Musk's vetting. I mean, he's never been vetted. His finances have never been looked over. Nobody knows really very much about him. There's been one biography written about him, but that's not official. In terms of what we do, when I was Secretary of Labor, to get to be Secretary of Labor, they had to go through everything, every job I have ever had, everybody I've ever known. They've interviewed. They went. I mean, it was a big, big deal. Musk has gone through nothing.
But he's an open book on X. I mean, that's what he would say.
Right. That's right. That's what he... And
he's
done
it himself. He's done the security clearance himself.
He's the richest person in the world, and he has 220 million followers on X. I mean, the power that this man has is really unrivaled, except for that of Donald Trump.
And if he gave each one of those followers $1, it would still be less than what he gave Donald Trump to win in November.
And he has just put in another $100 million into the Trump coffers just to sell what Trump is doing. And we're going to get into this because it was on your list. He also has been he's been threatening judges who disagree with what Trump and Musk are doing.
And supporting the Republicans who are pro-impeachment of those judges, which, I mean, we're getting into it before we're getting into it.
Let's get into it. Let's get
bubbling
into it.
Up. Okay, can we start with, you had a great Substack about the Department of Education. I mean, that was 2 days ago, which feels like 100 years ago. Executive order to abolish the Department of Education. What is happening?
Good question. What is happening? We don't know exactly. Again, same problem of lack of transparency. But Trump did sign an executive order Thursday afternoon, basically telling the Secretary of Education, the Worldwide Wrestling Secretary of Education, no, we've got to get rid of the Department of Education. And please make preparations. Fire half the people in the education department. Let me remind you and all our listeners and viewers again that Congress set up the Department of Education. It's a $100 billion operation. It's not small. It's not insignificant. Jimmy Carter was the president when it was established. A lot of people care about education and the Department of Education. So how can Trump just do this? Now, how can Musk just do this? Well, they do it by executive orders that fire people. I mean, that's basically what they're doing. They are pretending that they are still keeping the Department of Education open for Congress's purposes, for legal purposes, but they're firing everybody who works in the Department of Education, which means the Department of Education really is not going to continue.
And to your point, this is unpopular. 58% of voters said, no thanks, we don't want it abolished. And in that executive order, there was more than just the Department of Education. There were museums, and this is part of a larger push, which you've talked about, which we've talked about, where we're looking at the defunding of universities. We're looking at the defunding of the NIH and CDC. And you had a good Substack on this week that talked about the American mind. And so the reasoning behind this is not just willy-nilly rampaging. It's more specific than that. Will you share that?
Heather, every tyrant in history, going back to Julius Caesar, has tried to get rid of learning, get rid of books. The Nazis burned the books. Slaveholders didn't allow slaves to become educated. If you were a slave and you tried to understand writing and learning, you were going to be punished severely. Why do tyrants want people to be ignorant? Because they know that an educated population is the enemy of tyranny. It's very hard for tyrants to rule over people who are educated. And this is why, since the beginning of the United States, education has been so important. Free, universal, public education. Horace Mann, all of the great educators in history come out of this notion that democracy needs education. And so you have Donald Trump mounting a direct assault on not only the Department of Education, but calling for libraries to be cut, the amount of money for libraries, the amount of money for museums, cutting, as you said, all of the funding sources for our universities, threatening Columbia University with $440 million withdrawal of money. Other universities that are on his list of sort of bad universities for some strange reason. And this is all part of a Republican Trump plot. It also, when I say Republican, I mean this is part of their assault on primary and secondary education. You can't teach about America's history of slavery. You can't mention, that we actually did engage in a kind of, look at what we did to the Native American population of the United States. You can't even talk about this. So the Republicans and Trump especially have taken on education the way tyrants in history have taken on education.
Right. And I like the term civic virtue, which, we've talked about for years. And the founding fathers talked about the fact that people who are educated, that's how you run a democratic republic. You have to have people who understand civics, who understand a broad range of things to know what their representatives are going to be fighting for. And this is counter to that. So it's not just people fight for education's sake, which is also fine by me, but it's so as a dismantling of democracy tactic.
The dismantling of democracy tactic, that's exactly right. And, education and deliberation. Part of democracy is deliberating. It's not just getting information. It's being thinking critically about that information, and deliberating with others. Is that a problem? Is it truthful? What can we understand about it? How does this fit into a larger pattern? That's all education,
Right.
And that's what tyrants really fear.
Right, and protecting dissenting voices. That's what I know I've taken your classes. You talked about that in our classes and to your undergrads. I saw them too.
Well, the first thing I tell my classes, and you were there in my class, and you remember, I said, the best way of learning, seek out people who disagree with you. If they disagree with you, find out why they disagree with you. Talk to them. Test what your opinions are against what theirs are. That's what learning is all about. Learning is about provocation. Learning is about dissenting voices. Learning is about all sorts of a diversity of voices. But this is what Trump, and this is what the Trump Republicans, and this is what tyrants in history have tried to subdue.
Right, and the supposition there is that it's civil, right? To a certain degree. It can be heated conversations, but it can't just be shut down constantly, and it can't be so. Now it's so angry. It's so
dark. Angry. It's dark and angry. And, it's the left so-called, has not been completely free of guilt here, because over the past 10 years, there have been incidents where left-wing students and professors have not wanted to allow voices of so-called right-winger students and professors to be heard. I'm increasingly uncomfortable with these terms left and right, because right now they mean nothing. We're in a war between democracy and fascism. It's not left and right. But I wanted to point that out. I mean, in the university, in our schools, and every place else, dissent, reasonable, as you pointed out just now, civil dissent is absolutely the core.
Yep. So back to the legalities of things, because I find it handy that you went to law school. So when we have coffee, I can lean into that.
It wasn't handy at all.
Well, it's handy for me in these coffees. So these chats, can he abolish, can we use that word, the Department of Education? The president, you talked about Jimmy Carter 45 years ago. Congress approved this. I mean, can we get into some court decisions and what's going to happen? I mean,
yes.
Can he abolish it, Bob?
This is the critical point, because every other constraint on Trump is disappearing. I mean, Republicans in Congress certainly are not doing anything. Sadly, Democrats have decided pretty much to do nothing. Look at Chuck Schumer. And although the Democrats in the House have been pretty vocal, but you don't have the kind of counter-offensive to Trump that even we had in the first Trump administration, even though this Trump administration is much worse. So where is the opposition coming from? The constraint is coming from the federal courts, from the judges, from the district court judges, because they're the first line of defense. And they have, by my total, I don't know, Heather, you might have a different number. I have about 120 cases now in the federal courts. And they are starting to the federal judges are starting to come out, and they're saying, no, you don't have, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, you do not have the authority to do what you're doing. You are breaking the law. And even this past week, it's been remarkable, the number of judicial decisions that have, whether it's a preliminary injunction or it's an actual decision on the merits, these judges are saying, no, you can't do this.
But it's never going to be the case that he goes on Truth Social, raises his hand and say, my bad, you're right, I'm taking it back. I'm going to issue a little piece of paper. It's going to say where I screwed up. That's not going to happen. So I feel like we're in this in-between phase, right, where we're all kind of white-knuckling and holding on. And so we think, is this a constitutional crisis? Not this very second? I mean, what defines a constitutional crisis? Where are we in the spectrum of listening to the courts or not listening to the courts?
Well, that's a very good question. There is no official definition of a constitutional crisis. What we have assumed is that a constitutional crisis occurs when the branches, the three major branches of government, the Congress and the executive and the judiciary, simply are at loggerheads and they cannot move forward. Now, we do have Congress and the president at loggerheads in the sense that the president is doing things that Congress would never have approved of, but Republicans in Congress are officially in charge of both chambers right now and are not willing to buck Trump. So that leaves the courts. Now, if Trump were to say, I will not go along with you, a judge that says, for example, as Judge, I think Boasberg said this week, District Court Judge Boasberg, you cannot send all these Venezuelans to prison in El Salvador. Who knows what reasoning? Who knows that they've done anything wrong?
And using the Alien Enemies Act in particular, right?
That's right. Of the 18th century, I mean, an act that requires that the United States be at war to justify itself. And so Boasberg has said, no, you can't do it. In fact, those planes should turn around and come back to the United States that have all those Venezuelans on them. Well, of course, the Trump administration said no. Those planes have already landed and we can't do anything about it. So that's still in a state of flux.
And to be clear, you put this in your Substack, but so Trump came out on Truth Social and said, this guy needs to be impeached. And then he also said he's a radical left lunatic. But keep in mind, he's the one that released Hillary Clinton's emails and also said Trump does not have to give up his tax returns.
Yes, this is not a radical left judge. This is, if anything, this is a Republican right-wing judge, but it doesn't matter. Trump doesn't like what he did, so Trump wants him to be impeached. And then the Chief Justice of the United States, John Roberts, said publicly in a kind of a rebuke, a rare public rebuke to Trump, you can't impeach. You can't threaten to impeach a judge because you disagree with the judge's opinion. The proper way of dealing with that is you appeal the opinion to the Court of Appeals.
That's it. It's not an appropriate response. That's
inappropriate.
What he said. Yep.
He could have gone much farther and say, you don't threaten judges in ways that make judges worry about their safety and the safety of their...
But he also didn't say President Trump, and so then President Trump went on the news, said, well, he didn't mention me.
Well, that's right. This is not new in the sense that there has been a previous instance in the first semester, the first term.
What are you, a teacher?
Where there was a little bit of a clash between Roberts and Trump. But no, the interesting thing about this particular clash is that there was not much that Trump did in terms of responding. And more importantly, to your point, Trump has not said, I'm not going to obey what these judges decide. If he did, then we'd really be in a constitutional crisis. But it was interesting, Heather. I don't know if you heard or saw the Trump interview with Laura Ingraham this week on Fox. That interview did not get much play, but it was very important because on that interview, and Laura Ingraham's Fox News is a MAGA magnet. It's basically only watched and listened to by true magnets. What Trump did is he said, I'm going to obey the law as the courts interpret the law. I am not going to disobey. I'm not going to do what my vice president, J.D. Vance, has urged me to do. I'm not going to say, in effect, as President Andrew Jackson was reputed to have said, apocryphal. I don't think he did this, but Vance has said, you have, like President Andrew Jackson, what Trump ought to do is say the Supreme Court has made its decision. Now the Supreme Court should try to enforce it. And obviously the Supreme Court can't. But this is important because Trump said he would abide by these decisions.
And then he goes off to play golf. This is my point. Is he actually abiding by them? I feel like we're in this in-between where he's now said that, and there have been some rulings, including about Doge, right? And Elon Musk's place in terms of authority. There were some
technically, I beg your pardon for interrupting.
No, please, interrupt me.
Technically, Trump is not bucking the courts. Not yet. And when Laura Ingraham asked him on Fox News, can you imagine any instance when you might actually do this? He said, no, we can't do this, which is interesting. Why is Trump so determined to not have a constitutional crisis? I think a lot of it has to do back to the New York Post and back to the Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch, because what Trump was very sensitive to is that the New York Post, in a series of op-eds and editorials, has said, Trump, don't buck the courts, obey the courts, don't create a constitutional crisis. And Murdoch is sending a signal to Trump And
Who
Trump
reads
does
the New York Post every day, right?
Yes,
According
yeah,
to-
the only. I mean, he's not reading my Substack. I assure you,
I mean,
and he's not reading even the New York Times. No, but
right.
he's reading the New York Post, and that New York Post is saying to him, Murdoch is saying to him through the New York Post, don't try to create a constitutional crisis. You're going to lose, and I'm not going to support you. You're on your own.
This is wild how politics works. I mean, couldn't he just text him and say the same thing? It's so
Much better if it
multi-layered.
comes through the New York Post.
Honestly, it's so interesting. I love that you pointed that out in a Substack this week too. I wish you'd write a Substack. It's been a while. Do you need to go and write a Sub? Am I keeping you from writing a Substack?
Yes, I have
Probably.
one right here that I've got to do.
But and that a little bit of good news was the 25,000 fired federal workers. There was a court opinion about them too, right? Reinstating them.
Yes, they
Worth
were.
something.
They were all probationary workers. Now they didn't have full-time official, civil service status. But the court did. In fact, there were two court opinions, Heather. Two courts in different jurisdictions, both district courts, said you have got to rehire. DOJ has no authority to fire those workers. And those workers had every reason to expect that they were going to continue to be public employees. Yes, they are supposed to be reinstated. I don't know how the Office of Personnel Management is going to manage their reinstatement. Because a lot of people, when they are told that they are fired, they go and get another job.
Or try to. I mean, it's been
Or
quick.
they try to, yeah.
But also just the HR. Can you imagine the HR of trying to rehire? Oh, I'm exhausted for the federal workers who still have their jobs of rehiring the federal probationary workers who are now coming back.
I mean, the whole thing is chaos.
I
I mean,
know.
it's just chaos between Musk and Trump. I can't imagine how anybody gets anything done in that administration. But they
I
do
know.
seem to be churning out executive orders, at least executive orders.
That's, you print it, he signs it, you got the cameras in the office. So the other thing is that Musk
He's not
has been-
using an auto pen. He is not
Oh, I
using
know.
an auto pen.
No, can't use the auto pen because that's null and void. But also, Musk has been so loud on Twitter, X per usual, but also, and we mentioned this a little bit earlier, calling for these impeachments of judges. Who is he to do that? His popularity is not great, which is fascinating to see because Trump's is also not great, but I would think Trump's disapproval rating would be even higher.
Well, it's now before you go, I mean, it is remarkable. I mean, this is still the honeymoon period, and there are more Americans who disapprove of him and his performance as president than approve of his performance as president. Just 8 weeks. A little over 8 weeks. I mean,
And
that's
it's low compared to other presidents, and it's low compared to his first presidency.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Musk is not helping. And I think that's what you're getting at. Musk's approval rating is even lower than Trump's.
But does Trump like that? This is my question. Is this helpful to him? I mean, is he taking some of the heat? I wonder
Well,
about it.
it's a good question. I mean, I could argue that yes, it's great to have somebody who is a lightning rod. If you're the president,
Right.
have another lightning rod. But he may be pulling Trump's approvals down too. That is Musk, because so many people are angry. And look at these town halls. Every time a Republican goes home to his or her district and has a town hall, people are screaming at them. Republican members of Congress, usually about Musk.
Exactly. And so what has Doge been up to this week besides their leader shouting on X? Anything you want to
I think
report on?
the most damaging, from the standpoint that we're talking about, that is public opinion, is going after Social Security.
The third rail. Talk about a lightning rod.
Talk about the craziness. I mean, one reason that Musk's popularity is pulling down Trump's and is going down himself is because you don't fool around with people getting access to Social Security. You fire so many Social Security administration workers that they can't even man the phones or be there for people who call in. And I am of the age, Heather, where occasionally I do collect Social Security and I do occasionally need a little bit of information. And up until recently, when I called Social Security, I got a response very, very quickly. Now, not so sure. And when you have seniors, don't get the seniors of America upset with you. Not only is the boomer generation huge, but they are politically very active, even if they're not Republican, even if they're not Democrat, even if they're independent, even if they're usually not activist. You take away their Social Security or jeopardize their Social Security, they are going to be infuriated.
But you mentioned the phones. I mean, the whole thing is Doge is trying to take away phone capacity. I mean, they want it to be all online and in person. Everyone's having to re-verify their identity. They claim this is going to cut huge amounts of waste and fraud. Blah, 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 their favorite phrase of this year.
But it's a tiny...
When in fact, it's 0.0065% of the total budget. This little bit that they claim to do a sweeping policy change.
It's 0.0065 of Social Security budget. I mean, and they are claiming it's saving money, while it means that people cannot get their Social Security, or older people who can't they can't walk very easily. They can't appear in person at the Social Security office, and they're closing.
Getting there and waiting in line.
It's a mess. The targets that they are choosing are so utterly stupid. I mean, really stupid.
But also Trump has said we're not going to cut Social Security, hasn't he? Or if we did, it would be, he kind of goes around that one, too.
Well, he says we're not going to cut Social Security, but what you're doing, if you're making it harder for people to get Social Security, if you're making it harder for people to call Social Security, you are putting up roadblocks to Social Security, and you are effectively cutting Social Security.
I think the other thing that's so critical is the uncertainty and anxiety that this is giving to so many people. I went to the post office yesterday, and there was a person in front of me in line. I want to say she was in her 80s, and she was right in front of me, and she went and she said, I better buy some Forever stamps. I'm not sure if they're still going to be valid, but the tariffs are about to drop, and I don't know what's going to happen with the economy. I mean, she literally said this. The postal worker, who I've known forever because it's my local, was kind of like, okay, cool, I got to ring you up. But she was so scared. She basically and was announcing this. Like, I am so worried about what's happening. I'm buying extra Forever stamps because I'm hoping that rate stays the same and they still work in the coming months.
Now extrapolate that uncertainty, that worry that person in line in front of you had to the entire population of the United States in terms of what's happening. What's happening with tariffs? What's happening with inflation? What's happening with the economy? What's happening with Social Security? I'm confused. I'm worried. I don't know. Heather, this uncertainty itself is an economic problem. This makes more people want to, even if they're not capable of saving very much because they're living paycheck to paycheck, they're going to hold back some of their spending because they don't know about the future. And if they hold back their spending, the entire economy starts collapsing. Or we get into the territory, which I don't really want to get into because it's such bad territory, and that is we get a combination of recession and inflation. It's happened before under Jimmy Carter's watch, and we could have stagflation again.
The good news is that the polling, people are mad at Trump about the economy right now, currently. So I think that's obviously a reflection of what you just said.
Good news if you're on our side of the ledger. I mean, not good news if you're an average working person.
No, it's good news for the truth. It's good news for the truth that people are realizing that he isn't going to save everything and it isn't going to all be all great and his campaign promises are false.
Yeah.
In other good news,
we take every bit of good news we can.
I know, and I like your Friday, one of them, Substacks that you send, where you sometimes give us some reasons for you're nauseously optimistic.
We've talked about two of them. One of them is the courts, and that Trump is not fighting back, at least, not not now. And the second is a lot of people coming to these town halls and sounding off. And actually, we also talked about the economy being down and his ratings being down, and that's all good in terms of getting the truth out. You're absolutely right.
And I do want to pull some of these clips of the town halls and the booing and all the goodness that is happening, the good trouble, across the country. So we'll do that in a minute. But first, let's have a conversation with FTC Commissioner Rebecca Slaughter, who we have here with us, who was fired this week. Welcome, Rebecca. Here we are with Commissioner Rebecca Slaughter. Thank you for joining us. So our first question is, why were you illegally fired this week?
Thanks, Heather. Thanks, Robert, for having me. It's a great question. I don't know the answer to it. And I don't know because the president didn't say. In the letter or the email, I should say, that was sent to me from someone in the White House Office of Presidential Personnel, purportedly on behalf of the president, he basically just said, the president believes that he can fire you, so he's firing you.
Commissioner Slaughter, first of all, thank you for being with us. I'm going to call you Commissioner Slaughter because I don't think you were legally fired. You are still FTC Commissioner Slaughter. Isn't that appropriate to call you Commissioner?
Yes, I would tell you should feel free to call me Becca, but if you're going to use a title, it should be Commissioner because I agree that the firing was not, or the purported firing was not legal, because there is a very, very clear statutory law that has been around for over 100 years that says FTC commissioners can only be removed for neglect, inefficiency, and malfeasance. So in other words, for cause. And the president did not assert any cause to fire us because there is no cause to fire us, which means the alleged firing was inconsistent with the statute and with clear Supreme Court precedent that's been around for 90 years that says that statute is constitutional.
Now, you were fired the same time that Commissioner Bedoya was fired. Is that right? Yeah. The two of you were the so-called Democratic appointees to the 5-member Federal Trade Commission. I didn't realize you were told of this, or you were told that you were fired by email.
Yes, I was at my daughter's elementary school, and at the end of the day, and surrounded by 80 elementary school kids working on a drama club production, and I checked my email and found a note from the White House Office of Presidential Personnel. So yeah, it was pretty shocking.
Oh,
so jarring.
What kind of world are we living in, Heather?
It kind of reminded me of the Sex and the City episode where she got broken up with on a Post-it. I don't know if that cultural touchstone is too dated, but
it's so brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope you were wearing a fabulous outfit just like Carrie Bradshaw would have been.
I am many things, but no Carrie Bradshaw.
Well, so it's so interesting. I don't think as many people know about the FTC as we would like to. So 5 commissioners, right? So Trump is president. He's Republican. He gets to dub 3 of the 5, right, who are going to be of his party as Republican. Now it stands that there are only 2 commissioners on the website, because I looked at the website this morning, both Republican. Can you tell our audience a little more about how the FTC is supposed to function and how it's not doing that right now?
Sure. Well, actually, I'm going to correct you a little bit, Heather, because the commission is a 5-member commission by statute, but it does not say that the statute does not say that the current president gets to appoint all 5 commissioners. What the statute says is that there are 5 commissioners. No more than 3 may be from the same party. And by tradition, that has meant that 3 are from the party of the president. But I, for example, was originally appointed by President Trump in 2018 as a minority commissioner, and I have served through that duration. I was reappointed by President Biden to a term that ends in 2029 and was confirmed into that position last year. So the first point is that it's not that the president gets to appoint 3 from his party and 2 from the other party. It's that the statute says members of the commission serve terms fixed to the calendar and no more than 3 may be from the same party, because the statute intends, and Congress intended, for the commission to be composed of members from different ideological and political backgrounds to create balance and dissent and shared drive towards consensus where possible. I thought you had also asked about what the Federal Trade Commission does and what it's less able to do now in this universe. And I think it's a really important question, because it's very easy in the alphabet soup of Washington to think, oh, FTC trade, is that something about like international tariffs? And actually what the FTC does is really pay attention to ordinary Americans in some of the most important ways where they interact with the economy. We are the police for corporate lawbreaking. Not criminal lawbreaking, but the ways corporations can lie and cheat and compete unfairly in order to get ahead in the marketplace. So we call that competition and consumer protection. Still kind of lofty terms. What it means for real people is we police fraud, we police scams, we police unfair conduct around drug prices that will keep your insulin too expensive. We challenge grocery store mergers. Like last year, we successfully challenged the proposed merger of Kroger and Albertsons, which would have been the largest grocery store merger in history. We challenge hospital mergers. We're currently in a bunch of different cases challenging big tech conduct and consolidation. We have rules preventing junk fees, and we are litigating, challenging the largest landlord for stacking junk fees onto people's rental agreements. And so it's the kinds of things where for people in their everyday lives, we're looking out for making sure that the economy is free and fair for consumers, for workers, and for small businesses. So that's what we're supposed to be doing.
Federal Trade Commission, that's what you're supposed to be doing. Federal Trade Commission, by the way, is the oldest independent regulatory agency in the federal government, founded in 1914. I know, because I used to work there. But Commissioner, what do you think is the reason that Trump fired you and your fellow Democratic, quote unquote, commissioner? Is it about a test case? I mean, is this going to go to the Supreme Court? Do they want to test the question of whether independent regulatory agencies can even exist?
Yeah, well, they've said pretty clearly that they don't think independent regulatory agencies can exist. The acting Solicitor General about a month ago said the administration would no longer defend the constitutionality of independent agencies, notwithstanding the 90-year-old clear Supreme Court precedent that has not been overturned despite opportunities for the court to do so. So yes, I think they want a test case. But the other question that you asked is why? Why do they care? You pointed out, I'm a minority commissioner. I'm not going to control their agenda. I'm not going to interfere with their ability to do it. And I think that's the really important question. Why do we care about having independent agencies with multi-member bipartisan voices? And I think the really important point here is that it is about accountability and transparency. I can't control the agenda, but I can call out where I think something is not being done fairly in accordance with the law. If I think there is corruption, it is not lost on me at all that of the group of CEOs who were surrounding the president in his inauguration, the FTC is in active litigation against most of their companies. So it's really important that the law be enforced without fear or favor. And when we say that, what we mean is it should be enforced without the fear of getting fired for refusal to do a favor for the president's political donors and buddies. And if the president can remove me, he could also remove the chair of the agency for refusing to dismiss a case against one of those donors, or refusing to challenge a merger that one of those donors is proposing. And so I think that we should be very, very suspicious about what this removal of, or attempted removal of, transparency and accountability means for the administration of the law without fear or favor.
I just want to do a follow-up question on that, because we're talking about the motives for the White House, for the president, in essentially firing you illegally. One is the possibility he wants to do a test case getting up to the Supreme Court on whether the Supreme Court will reverse its old precedent, Humphrey's executor, about an independent regulatory agency, which happens to be the Federal Trade Commission. The second, though, you just brought up, and that is that the president's cronies are, a lot of CEOs who have also been targets of the Federal Trade Commission, and maybe he wants to do them a favor. Which is it? Which do you think is the primary motive?
Well, to be clear, I'm not really in a position to speculate on the president's motives, but I also don't think those points are mutually exclusive. I think that they could both be goals, or there could be some other goal that I'm not even aware of. Because again, no reason was given in the email that was sent to us, and the press secretary, when she was asked about it, didn't give any reason. And I think what's important to note is that the tradition of bipartisan accountability and bipartisan commissioners goes back to the founding of the FTC, but also was one in which our current majority commissioners actively participated. When they were in the minority, they engaged in dissent and debate, and also, importantly, drove towards consensus on issues. I actually think that's one of the best parts about the bipartisan feature of the FTC. You get to pressure test different ideas. You get to understand a different perspective. You get to seek out and sometimes, in fact, often find consensus. And that consensus helps build consistency and durability in the law. And that is a really positive thing, not just for the individual people who rely on us for the protection, but also for honest businesses who want predictability and stability in the markets.
That's it. So plans to appeal, I'm assuming?
Yes, we will be in court.
Talk about it?
Yes, absolutely. We will be in court. Details to be announced. But I think it's not a close call about whether to challenge this legally, because it was not a close call about whether this purported firing is illegal. How it plays out, we will see. But there is no doubt that Commissioner Bedoya and I will be challenging this action.
Can I ask you just a little bit about that appeal? Is it both of you are going to appeal? Are you part of a class action? Are you being supported financially? I mean, it's not easy to appeal as an individual. How is this going to be? How does this work?
It's not. And I think our intention at this point is to file together. I don't think two people make a class. I think we are just two individuals. For what it's worth, we're two individuals who I think it's really bad news that this has happened. But what is good news is a lot of people care, and a lot of people have been offering support in terms of both legal support, emotional support, and encouragement. So I think we're really committed to the fight, and we feel really well supported in it. And exactly how it proceeds legally, we will see. But the case is really important.
And you were the first commissioner to give birth while serving, right? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting experience for me. I have 4 kids. When I was confirmed originally in 2018, my confirmation hearing was 9 days after the birth of my third child. And I started serving, I was sworn in on her 1-month birthday. And so that was an unusual experience. And then I was lucky enough to get pregnant with a 4th child. And she was born in May of 2020, which is, if you think about the calendar, not an ideal time for having a baby. And it was the first time that I am aware of, certainly that any commissioner at the FTC, but also, as far as we could tell, at any other agency had given birth while in office. So it was a learning experience, but one that I am really grateful to have had. I love the job and I love my kids. And part of why I love the job, honestly, is because I love my kids. The job that we do protects kids, not just mine, but all kids. The FTC is the cop on the beat for children's privacy and online safety. And that's an incredibly important role that I have a front seat in understanding as a parent. And so I think of my younger two kids as my FTC babies, and they have grown up with and at the agency.
You know, you remind me that in I guess it was 1980 or 81, under Chairman Michael Perchuk, a little bit before your time, we had a rule that would have prevented cereal makers and candy manufacturers and so on from advertising directed at children. It was called the KidVid rule. Do you?
Oh, KidVid is legendary.
It was probably legendary because Congress basically took away our appropriation for a little while until we promised not to do anything like that. That was the first time a big business, big corporate money was very evident in American politics. So I want to thank you, Commissioner, for being with us. I just had one final question that gnaws at me, and that is the chair of the FTC, Andrew Ferguson. When you got this email, did you say to him, or did you have a communication with him? I don't want to do anything or say anything that might come out in court, but did he lock you out of your office? I mean, what was his response to this illegal firing?
He asked me to confirm whether I had gotten the email, and I did. And I asked him what his plan would be with respect to my staff. Honestly, what I was the most immediately concerned about were the people who work for me, who are really good, honest public servants. And I wanted to know, whatever happens to me, what would happen to them. So honestly, we just talked about the logistics. I have been locked out of all of my technological systems. I haven't attempted to go back into the office. I assume I wouldn't be allowed, but I haven't attempted to it because it doesn't do anything to Chairman Ferguson, but it would put the security guards, the staff at the agency in a difficult position. And I have no interest in making things any harder for those public servants than they already are right now in the middle of the broad assault on public servants that is happening. So I haven't tried.
Well, I want to thank you, and I'm sure Heather joins me, for your public service. And just to take what you said and magnify it, being a public servant is a noble calling, even in normal times. These kinds of times are not normal times, and we need to support and really celebrate our public servants, especially now. So thank you for being with us.
Can I just echo that point? Can I just echo that point for 1 second? I think it is an incredibly important one. I mentioned that I'm getting a ton of support and a ton of attention, and I feel really appreciated, and that's great. I don't think most of the public servants who are under assault right now are getting that same kind of support and attention, and they really deserve it, and they really need it. These are people who are sacrificing better paying jobs with shorter hours because they want to help their fellow Americans. And that, exactly like you said, is a noble calling and something that should be appreciated. And they are really having a hard time right now. And so I know there's something in the zeitgeist that suggests that people who serve their fellow citizens are are lazy in some way, and it's just not the case in my experience. I've spent 9 months of my career in the private sector and the entire rest of the time in the public sector, and so I have a particular affinity and appreciation for the people I've worked with throughout my career, and they're really, really having a tough time right now, those who have lost their jobs, but even those who haven't, and so I appreciate your call to support them. I think it is enormously important.
Well,
Hear, hear.
We will all get through this. But Commissioner, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
I found her so inspiring, and it's amazing the way these federal workers are fighting the good fight.
I agree with you, Heather. And remember, she was fired out of absolutely nowhere. I mean, she expected to stay there, of course, and she and her fellow Democratic appointee were just, their jobs were eliminated. Trump just said, "I'm sorry, I disagree with you, bye."
Right. After he put her in during Trump 1, as you call it.
Yes. And, what's also interesting is that Andrew Ferguson, who is the chair of the Federal Trade Commission, he then proceeded to lock her out of her office.
Common tale that's happening now. So let's look at what's happening around the country at these different town halls. So Republicans are throwing town halls or hosting things, and people are coming in and not happy. And the topics are often Social Security, right? And things related to Doge and Musk. What have you been seeing?
Same thing. And I've been hearing a lot about these things. I mean, the Republicans the leading Republicans have told Republican members of Congress, rank and file, don't have town halls anymore. Do it remotely if you have to do them at all, because these town halls have become so raucous, so crazy. I mean, I was just in touch with somebody in Wyoming. And they had a town hall. Now, Wyoming, you can't get, redder or more Republican than Wyoming. And somebody stands up in a town hall and says, I am a Republican. I'm an Alan Simpson Republican. And I want to know why you're destroying the federal government.
It's good. It's good. There is enthusiasm. So let's hold on to it and let's take a look.
Okay, let's talk about this. So your proposal to solve this is to tax the rich.
For example, folks at the National Weather Service.
You have a perception that America is spiraling to some kind of constitutional crisis. Yeah. And
when will you stand up to them and say that is enough?
The end result of the fraud and abuse that has been discovered already.
He's gotten rid of birthright citizenship.
Illegal as hell.
The other one is the Doge program. I am very glad that someone is looking at all of the waste.
To the president from the American people, am I correct?
No!
There's not a mandate by the American people who is overwhelming.
30%!
The Congressional Budget Office, you know what it's going to be by 2035? It's going to be $59 trillion. Did I tell you?
Doge is not dismantling Social Security. It's so bizarre to me how obsessed you are with federal government. But here's the thing. You guys are going to have a heart attack if you don't calm down. I'm sorry. Your hysteria is just really over the top.
Ooh. Wyoming, Nebraska, Texas, Oklahoma. I mean, we're not talking about, liberal enclaves in America, Heather. These are the reddest of the red. These are Republican places, Republican districts, and these members of Congress, Republican members of Congress, not only are they getting booed, they are going to be removed from office. They are on the edge of the end of their careers, and I hope they get the message.
I know. And then we have Bernie continuing the tour, bringing in AOC yesterday. Oh, it's good to see.
And interesting, Bernie and AOC, they are going to Republican enclaves as well. They're going to Republican states, they're going to Republican districts, where even the Republican members of Congress have refused to have town halls, given all the booing, given all of the anger. I like to think of this, Heather, as good news. The American public, we are not Republicans. We're not Democrats. We are members of a society in which we are being abused by a president who has absolutely no constitutional right to do what he's doing.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Should we meet back in a week and keep going?
Let's keep going. On that, that was a good note to end on. I want to thank you, Heather, for you're just terrific, and I want to thank everybody out there for your tenacity and your commitment and your dedication. We will get through this. See you next week.